All right, welcome back. So, what we're going to do right now is we're going to start working on the purchase journal. So as we talked about before, in this project, you are the middleman. You are a target in this project. So you're going to make up your own company name. It can be whatever company name you like, and you can buy and sell whatever you want. So, but for an example right now, I'm just going to say your target. And so we're going to buy inventory. And so we're going to do that through our purchase journal. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to do, as you notice we have here, we have our purchase journal table. So we have our PO number, we have our date, we have the vendor, the product, the units, unit cost, and total cost. So the PO number is simply saying what numbered transaction is this, okay? The date is saying when did this transaction occur. The vendor is who did I buy from in this transaction. The product is what products did I buy in this transaction. The units, which can also be called quantity if you want. So you can call it units or quantity. That's how many things that I buy. Did I buy one unit of 7-Up, or did I buy 6 units of Coke, or some different amount? The unit cost is how much does one unit of 7-Up cost, or how much does one unit of Coke cost? And then the total cost is simply going to be the units multiplied by the unit cost. So what was the total price of that transaction, okay? So different prices for different goods and different quantities of goods. All right. And then the sum equation down here, this is simply telling me in the year so far, how much have I bought? How much have I spent this year in buying goods? Okay. And so if you notice, we have our vendor here. We have a drop-down list of our different vendors, and we also have a drop-down list of our different products. So we need to have that information hidden somewhere to make this all work. And so all that information is over here on the side. So here is the different vendors that I have that are coming from that vendor list. Here are the different products that I have from my product list. This right here is going to be a quantity control, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And this right here is my unit cost. So how much does a unit of Coke cost? That costs $20. A unit of Pepsi costs $15. A unit of 7-Up costs $22, etc. And then over here, this little table to the side is going to track the inventory. This is going to be what's going to update my inventory when I buy different units. Okay. So if you notice here, I have this row. I have row 10. That's the heading for my purchase journal table. It's also the same row that I have the heading for each one of my products. That is not a coincidence. We need to make sure that is done so that this project will actually work and function. So our inventory will update appropriately. So here I have these different if functions. These if functions are simply saying if the product that I selected matches one of these products up here. So in this case, for this equation, if the product in my product cell in this row equals 7-Up, which it did, it's going to compare it to this 7-Up. It wants me to say how many units did I buy. I bought 1 unit of 7-Up. And over here, I bought 6 units of Coke. I have a sum equation down here to sum up all that information. And so this is what's going to go to my inventory page. So we'll go through all this step by step. Just want to give you a roadmap and idea of what we're going to do. Okay, so what we need to do is open up an Excel spreadsheet. And you want to go down a couple rows. I would suggest at least 5 or 6 to start the heading. So we need to make sure that we have room for all that information that we're going to create up here. And if you also notice, I have these macro buttons and hyperlinks. I need to make sure that I have room for that stuff up here. Okay, so I'm going to go down to say row 10 over here, and I'm going to start making the headings for my purchase journal table. So I have my PO number, I have the date, vendor, I'm going to have the product, I'm going to have the units or quantity, I'm going to have the unit cost, and then I'm going to have the total cost. Okay? And so I'm going to highlight that entire range of information, and I'm also going to just drag down one. So I can just click on my mouse, hold down, left click, hold down, and drag all the way across and down one row. Okay, and then here on my home tab, I'm going to make sure I have my home tab selected, and I'm going to go to this border button, and I'm going to drop down and I'm going to select all borders. That's going to put a border all the way around this. Then I'm going to highlight just the heading, okay, and bold it. That way it just looks a little bit better, looks a little bit more professional. All right, so PO number. For right now, we need you to put 1,000 down here. We're going to start all of our PO numbers with 1,000, our sales invoice numbers with 2,000, receipts with 3, payments with 4. And the reason we're doing that is when I go through a master file and I'm looking for information, I'm going to have all these numbered transactions, and I'm going to see all these 1,000s. I can know that all the 1,000s, those are all purchases. So I can go through those and check out the purchases, or I can go through and look at all the 2,000s and I can see all the sales. So we're just going to put a 1,000 down here for right now. So this blank row we have, this is going to be my first transaction. So we need to number that. It needs to be PO 1001. So we're going to do a formula, and we're going to say that this cell is going to equal the previous cell. It's going to equal the 1000 plus 1. Okay? So if you look up here in the formula bar up here, basically the formula is saying D12 plus 1. D12 is just a number, okay? It's just 1,000. So I'm basically saying I want this cell here to equal 1,000 plus 1, which is just 1,001. All right? Make sure whenever you're doing a formula in Excel that you always start the formula, whatever it is, with an equal sign. If you don't start with an equal sign, if you're doing just simple math, addition, subtraction, or if you're doing a formula like a VLOOKUP or an if function, whatever the formula is, it needs to start with an equals equation. If it does not, then the formula will not work. Excel will not know that you're trying to actually create a formula. So make sure you have that. The date we're going to do is called an equals today equation. Okay, so type in equals today, and then you need to make sure that you have an open and closing parentheses. So I'm going to do things here. I might do things incorrectly the first time just to kind of demonstrate the right way and the wrong way to do this. So you can't just simply type in equals today. I need to do equals today, open parenthesis and closing parenthesis. If I do that, I get today's date, the 13th of July. If I look up here in the formula bar, it has the formula, the equals today formula. And so if I close this project, if I save this workbook and open it up tomorrow, this date is then going to be 7-14 because the equals today function is still working, and it's going to say what's the date today, i.e. what's the date tomorrow when I open it up tomorrow, and it's going to say 7-14. And we don't want that to change. We want this to stay at 7-13 because when we go through our records and are looking for when these transactions occurred, I want to know that transaction 1001 happened on the 13th. So we're going to do what's called fixing the date. We're going to fix this date and make sure that it stays on the 13th. So I can go up here and copy the contents in that cell. You notice that I have a ribbon now around this cell. And then I'm going to go down to paste values. Okay. You notice up here in the formula bar that I no longer have the formula. Now I have the date. And this is what we want. This is a good thing. So this means that when I save this project today and I open it up tomorrow, I'm going to have this date is still going to be there. That date is not going to go away. It's not going to change. Okay. So if you ever have these little ribbons around here, you want to get rid of them, they're kind of annoying and they might give you headaches, just click the escape key and it'll go away. Alright, so now what we need is we need information for our vendor, product, our quantity control, and also our unit cost. And so we're going to go over here to the side and we're going to create that information. So I'm going to have a heading up here. It's going to be called vendor, product, unit cost, and quantity. Okay, so I have this way up here, and that's intentional. if I had a list going all the way down here, then when I run my macro, which we're going to do a little bit later, the macro is going to insert a new row and it's going to spread everything out. I would have a space in this list, which means that I would have my list here of vendors. I would have, say, Bob, Trudy, and then I have a space, and then I'd have Steve and Chris. And we don't want that. We want this list to just look consecutive. If you go to a website and you're going to buy something on Amazon, for example, and you select the state through a drop-down menu like this, it has all the states one by one. There's no spaces in between them or any gaps. So we don't want to have any spaces or gaps. If I had 1,000 transactions, I'd have 1,000 spaces in between here. And that would just be really, really not good. It would be a headache for the user to have to go all the way down just to look at 4 different vendors. So I'm going to make sure that I have all this information up here on top and that it's not going to overlap. So you need to make sure you have at least 4 vendors and 4 products, okay? So I'm going to just make up some vendors. I'm going to have John, I'm going to have Chris, Susan, and Jessica. You can make up whatever 4 vendors you want, and for right now, just take notes of this, but you're going to make up these vendors all on your own. And you're also going to make up your products. For right now, I'm just going to call this product 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? And so again, you're going to make these up yourself. So you're going to be a little bit more creative than I am. So unit cost is something you can just make up as well. So each one of my units is going to cost a different amount. Okay? So product 3 is going to cost $26, product 2 is going to cost $13, and so forth. And just so I know I'm talking about a monetary amount here, I'm going to highlight that area. I'm going to make sure I'm on my home tab, and I'm going to go over here and select this $sign. That's going to make it monetary. And so if you have an international computer, it may not be a $sign. It may be, a Canadian dollar or a euro or whatever it is, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be US dollars. However, if you want to make it US dollars, you certainly can. But it can be whatever currency you want. So quantity, this is going to be the maximum amount of quantity that I can buy in a given transaction. So, if I'm going to buy and sell airplanes, say for example Boeing 747s, does it really make sense that I'm going to buy, say, 100 Boeing 747s in a transaction? No. That's absurd. That's a crazy amount of Boeing 747s. But if I'm buying and selling, say, shoelaces for tennis shoes for a sports store, if I'm going to buy 50 packets of shoelaces, does that seem pretty reasonable? Yeah, that's pretty legitimate. That sounds like that's okay. So, you want to make this quantity control somewhat realistic and related to whatever product it is you select. So for right now, I'm just going to make up some quantity controls, okay? Oop. Okay, and again, these are not monetary, so I'm just going to leave them formatted the way they are. All right. The next thing is, as you remember from the example, I had this heading here of my products, and they were in the same row as the heading for my table. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And the quick way to do that is to just make a given cell equal that cell. So I can just say equals, click on product 1, click enter, and now I have product 1. So say I decide to get, creative and actually give my product a name. I'm going to say hat. Well, now this is going to change to hat. It basically just allows me to only have to change my product in one location. I don't have to go through and type it in different spots. The other thing is Excel is very particular. So that means that if you want this to say hat, and for them to match, they need to be exact. So they need to be spelt the exact same way, and also uppercase, lowercase. They need to be the exact same, okay? And so once I have that, I can just simply select all these different things here, okay? So I'm going to say equals, equals, all right. There we go. So now I got everything set up. Okay. And I've even got my PO number and my date. So next thing is my vendor. So my vendor is going to be coming from a data validation. So whenever we say data validation, you need to think of control, okay? Internal control. Controls could help with security. They could also help with some kind of efficiency as well. And so this is going to be a control to alleviate any typing error. I don't want to misspell John or Chris or Susan. If I have a new employee this is his first day working, he may not even know who my vendors are. So this allows everything to be very user-friendly, and it also removes any kind of errors such as typing errors. So I'm going to select Data on my Data tab, and I'm going to go over here where it says Data Tools and select Data Validation. It's this symbol here with a green check and a red circle. I'm going to select Data Validation. I'm going to get this data validation window to come up, and I'm going to select a list. Okay, I want a list of information in that cell, and it's going to ask for the source of that list. Where is this information coming from? So I'm going to click on that little formula tab right there, and I'm going to highlight where I want that vendor information to come from. So make sure you don't highlight the vendor, or else a potential vendor will be vendor, and we don't want that. These titles here are just for information, so I know what's what. So I'm just going to highlight my 4 vendors. If you notice, I have the range up there. I'm just going to click enter, and then it's going to bring you back to this, and it's going to say, okay, you have a list selected, and this is the source. Is that okay? I'm going to say yes, that's okay. And now I have this little arrow here off to the side. So now I can select a vendor. I'm going to select, say, for example, Susan. Okay? I'm going to do the exact same thing for product. I'm going to go to my data tab. I'm going to go up here to my data validation. I'm going to select a list. All right, a list of products. I'm going to click on this formula tab over here, and I'm going to select highlight the range of my products. I had hat, which I changed. It was originally 1, and now I have product 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and so I'm just going to click enter, and then yes, this is okay. I have a list. The range is okay. I'm going to click OK. So now if you see again, I have hat 2, 3, 4. If I wanted to change this now and say shoe, okay? Notice again that the 2 over here changed, and it now says shoe. I can also go here, and now this says shoe. So the data validation is not copying, per se, this exact information, okay? It's kind of like the matrix, all right? This hat here, hat really doesn't exist, okay? This hat here is just an illusion. All this is a formula, okay? It's basically just this cell in a different place, okay? But hat doesn't really exist, so I can change it. Same thing with this data validation. It's kind of like the matrix, okay? These things really don't exist. All this really is just a range, okay? It's this range, and if anything changes in that range, that's okay. It's going to change over here too. So I'm going to select shoe. And then the quantity right now is also going to be a data validation. This is going to be another control, okay? And I'm going to say data on my data tab. I'm going to go to data validation. And this is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be something we're going to type in, okay? So I want to type in a whole number. So if I want to buy products, could I buy 1.5 Boeing 747s or 1.5 packets of shoelaces? No. I could buy 1 or 2 or, more, but it's going to be a whole number, okay? And so the cap that we have over to the side, the quantity I select needs to be less than or equal to that cap. So I'm going to click right here and go all the way down to less than or equal to. So whatever number I put in here, based on a certain product, this number needs to be less than or equal to the cap that I've selected. Okay? And so now I'm going to have a VLOOKUP equation. Okay? So hopefully some of this DSC information is coming back to you. So I'm going to say equals, and you can also select this little formula bar here off to the side. Equals, remember I'm starting a formula, so I got to say equals first. Equals VLOOKUP, then open parenthesis. The first part of the VLOOKUP equation is basically asking you what is it that you're comparing. I'm comparing the product, okay? Based on the product that I select, I can buy different quantities of that product. So I'm going to select the product cell, and remember I'm in this row. So if I had 5 rows here, this data validation is going to be in this cell right here in this row. So I'm going to select this product in the same row. Okay, so now I need my table array. I need my range. Okay, and it needs to start with whatever it is I'm comparing. So I'm comparing products, shoes. So my range needs to start with the products. And I'm going to go all the way over and include the information that I need. I need the quantity. So I'm going to highlight all this. Even though the unit cost is in there, that's okay. Doesn't matter. I'm going to start with the product because that's what I'm comparing. Okay? And then I'm going to highlight all the way over to the information that I need. That's the quantity. Now you notice up here that I just have N2 to P5. This is not referenced at all. I need this to be absolutely referenced. So the quick way to do that is just to click F4. And that's going to put dollar signs over everything. That's basically going to freeze this area. So when this equation goes down, when I have new transactions, this equation is going to be all the way down there. I want it to always look at this information, because if I don't, this range is going to move down with the equation. And so I don't want this range to ever move. I want this to stay right here. I'm always looking at this range of information. So I'm going to absolute reference the column so it can never move side to side. I'm also going to absolute reference the row so it can never move up or down, okay? And I'm going to do that for both of them. And the quick way to do that is F4. So now that I have here when I'm comparing the shoe, it's G11. I have my range, okay, N2 to P5. Next, I need what column am I going to use? So remember, I highlighted this range. I had 3 columns. The column of information I'm using is the quantity column for my quantity cell. That's in my 3rd column. So I'm going to click 3. And then after that, I'm going to type in false. False just basically means that I want an exact match. I want it to find an exact match to shoe. I want those 2 things to be exact. So if this was a lowercase s, this was a capital S, and it wasn't false, I said true instead, then that would match. But remember, we're going to be very particular and very, very exact in Excel. And so I want this to be an exact match. I'm going to type false. And that's always going to be the case. Whenever you can type true or false in an equation, which is going to be a VLOOKUP equation, you're always going to type false. That's never going to change in this project, okay? So easy thing to remember. So again, it's just going to double check with me. You have a whole number selected. That whole number has to be less than or equal to a number based on this formula. Okay, and the formula looks good. I got the equals VLOOKUP. I'm comparing G11, the product. I got my range N2 to P5, and I'm using the 3rd column, the 1, 2, 3, 3rd column, and I want an exact match. All right, so now nothing's there, which is okay. But I have shoe, so I can only buy 45. So I type in, say, 40, it's going to be okay. I try and type in more than 45, it's going to stop me, okay? It's going to say the value entered is not valid. So I can click cancel, and it's going to bring me back to the 40, and so I can put anything in there up to 45. I can put in 45, 44. If I try and go over, it's going to stop me, okay? So that's how that control is working. All right, unit cost. Unit cost is also going to be a VLOOKUP equation, okay? Except for this time we're typing it into the cell. And so here is that information that I had here again, all right? So I have VLOOKUP. This is what I'm looking up, all right? The unit cost, again, it's related to the product. So I'm going to select product, okay? That G11. And I'm going to say comma. Notice that it moved to table array. This is the table that this information is coming from. Remember, my table array has to start with whatever it is I'm comparing. So I'm going to start highlighting what I'm comparing, the products, and just go over to unit cost. That's all I need. That's the information that I want is my unit cost. I'm going to click F4 to absolute reference everything. I don't want this range to ever move. I'm always going to do that for the VLOOKUP equation, okay? Now it's going to ask for the column index number. What column are you going to use for this equation? I'm going to use the 2nd column, okay? The 1, 2, 2nd column, unit cost. That's what I want. So I'm going to put in the 2, comma. Oh. And now here's that true and false, okay? I want an exact match. I want it to say false, okay? And so I can go back here. I'm going to type in false, and then I'm going to click enter, all right? So now I bought shoes from Susan. I bought 20 and they are $13 each, right? Shoes, $13 each. If I change this product to say hat, it's going to change. Hat is $15 each, okay? And I'm going to make this monetary. I'm going to go to my home tab and make this dollar signs, just so I know that this is a monetary amount and this is a quantity amount. This is a numerical amount, okay? Unit cost, or sorry, total cost, is going to be unit cost times quantity. So that's simply just going to say, I'm going to have my quantity, that cell, times, all right, so that little star, shift 8, and then I'm going to say unit cost, okay? So 20 times 15 is $300, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So basically now you've got your purchase journal table set up. We're going to take a break. Feel free to review this, work on this on your own, go through your notes, and then after that we're going to go over here and make our inventory tracking table, and then we're also going to talk about macros. So we'll see you in a little bit.